All right, today we are diving into a massive natural event that, and I mean this literally, sent ripples across the entire Pacific Ocean. It's an incredible story of raw geological power, a frantic race against time, and a global warning system that was pushed to its absolute limit.
Let's just start with this one. Staggering number, 8.7. On July 29th, 2025, that was the magnitude of the earthquake that tore through the ocean floor. And to be clear, this wasn't just another tremor. We're talking about one of the most powerful earthquakes humanity has ever recorded.
And with a quake of that sheer size happening right where it did, well, the ocean itself began to move. That moment kicked off a chain reaction that would be felt in a very real way, thousands and thousands of miles from where it all started.
So the epicenter was right here, in these cold, remote waters just off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. Now, this area is no stranger to earthquakes, but this was on another level. It was the biggest quake to hit this region since all the way back in 1952.
But, the most critical detail here isn't just the raw power, it's the depth. At only about 19 to 21 kilometers deep, this was considered a shallow quake. And a shallow quake under the ocean with this kind of magnitude, that is the perfect and most dangerous recipe for displacing a massive column of water, which is exactly how a tsunami gets born.
And yeah, that's precisely what happened. The second that seafloor ruptured, the clock started ticking. A tsunami was now moving. And the challenge was suddenly crystal clear. How on earth do you warn coastal communities spread across the world's largest ocean before that wave gets to them?
The speed here is it's breathtaking. Okay, so at time zero, the quake hits. Just 5 minutes later, that's barely enough time to even figure out what's happening. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issues an alert for the entire ocean basin. But only 15 minutes after that, the first waves were already crashing ashore on Russia's Kuril Islands. The race was officially on.
And that really is the central question, isn't it? Warning a single city is a huge task. So how do you warn an entire ocean, from Asia all the way to the Americas? Well, as we're about to see, a system built on decades of science and incredible cooperation was ready for the test. So let's actually follow the wave now. Its journey started with this violent birth near Russia, and it traveled all the way to the shores of Japan and even the beaches of Hawaii. But what's so interesting is that the impact it had was completely different in each of those places.
The data here tells such a cool story. So, Russia, being closest, got slammed with waves 3 to 4 meters high. That's like 10 to 13 feet, causing flooding. But then look at Japan. The waves were smaller, sure, but they triggered these huge evacuations that led to almost no damage. And then, way across the Pacific in Hawaii, a nearly 2-meter wave was met by blaring sirens and evacuations. Yeah, it caused epic traffic jams, but it prevented a real disaster.
You can really see the difference in power when you look at it like this. That huge 4-meter wave that hit Russia just dwarfs the ones that eventually made it to Hawaii and Japan. It's a pretty stark reminder of how a tsunami's energy works. It fades over distance, but it stays a very real threat thousands of miles from where it started.
But this quote from one of the aftermath reports, it just reveals this crucial human truth. Even when the warning systems work perfectly and the wave itself is survivable, the panic that comes with an evacuation, that becomes its own very real and very dangerous problem for officials to handle.
So why here? Why is this specific corner of the globe so prone to these incredibly violent events? Well, to get that, we kind of have to look at the very blueprint of our planet. The answer is something you've probably heard of, the Pacific Ring of Fire. Now, it's not a literal ring of fire, of course. It's this massive horseshoe-shaped zone where several of Earth's tectonic plates are constantly grinding against each other. The Kamchatka Peninsula sits right on this super active boundary, which makes massive quakes like this one pretty much inevitable.
So at the end of the day, this event wasn't some random freak accident. It was just a terrifying, powerful expression of the geological forces that are always churning away right under our feet. For the millions of people living along the Ring of Fire, this is the stark reality.
And that brings us to what I think is the most incredible part of this whole story, the success.
Because in the face of all that raw natural power, a system built by humans, built on science, technology, and cooperation, it worked. It worked remarkably well, and it prevented a much, much bigger catastrophe.
So how does it work? It's like this elegant four-step dance against time. First, a global network of sensors instantly detects the quake. Right away, centers like the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center analyze that data to model where the wave might go and how big it could be. From there, they warn authorities all across the globe. And finally, on the ground, local communities act, sounding sirens and getting people to safety.
And the difference this system makes is it's night and day. In the past, tsunamis would often show up with zero warning, causing horrific loss of life. Today, the threat is still there, but we now have this incredible ability to warn millions of people within minutes, giving them a real fighting chance to get out of the way. That is a truly monumental achievement. So, what's the big takeaway from the Kamchatka quake? It's that science and international cooperation aren't just abstract ideas. They are powerful, real-world tools that save lives. The system worked. The response on the ground was fast. And because all those pieces came together, a massive Pacific-wide disaster was avoided.
And that leaves us with a really critical question for the future. This time, the system worked. It was a success story. But as more and more people choose to live and build right along the world's coastlines, the potential for disaster only gets bigger. The real question is, will our ability to respond, to evacuate, and to stay safe continue to keep pace with that growing risk?